Hello. So the video that I chose to do the more in-depth analysis of the project was called Math by Example, Dislodging Misconceptions Before They Take Root. This is just the general project contact information that I was able to find. The project was run by the SERP Institute, and SERP stands for Strategic Education Research Partnership. So you can see here their headquarters are in DC, and they have just a basic email address and phone number listed. And I do have the link down here for the video that was posted on the STEM for All website. So from now on, I'll just refer to this project as Math by Example. And there's a whole lot that goes into this. So you need a little background information on the organization first. So SERP, they first created an Algebra 1 workbook to address major math misconceptions in Algebra 1. They were seeing a lot of students not pass Algebra 1, and then without those skills, students weren't able to succeed in higher level math classes. So they wanted to create a resource that really got at the heart of these misconceptions to try to dislodge them and prevent the students from making them again. I really like the quote that is on the SERP website that I put here. It says, research suggests that the simple instructional technique of having students study examples of problem solutions and explain targeted correct or incorrect steps in the example improves students' conceptual knowledge without sacrificing procedural skill. And this is how the workbook is set up. So you can see here, I just downloaded a PDF of one of the available resources. Students are shown an example of a problem that is solved incorrectly, and then it asks them these specific questions, what they did wrong. So they're not just looking at the problem that was done incorrectly, but they're looking at specific parts of it, and they're being asked specific questions. And then after they figure out what was done wrong, and they've addressed those misconceptions, then they are required to solve that problem correctly. But it's not just for problems that have been solved incorrectly. They also have examples of ones that are solved correctly, which you can see here. And then it still asks questions, similar questions addressing possible misconceptions. So the misconception it's addressing in this case is combining terms that aren't alike. So it asks, well, why didn't this person combine these terms? A student would say, because they're not like terms, you can't combine them. So that was an example of one of the materials for Algebra by Example. After using these workbooks with these Algebra 1 students, they saw a vast improvement in student achievement in Algebra 1, and it really helped to close the achievement gap. Even though this was originally created to close the achievement gap for minority students, it really benefited all students, but mostly the ones who were previously lowest achieving. So that was all Algebra by Example. Math by Example is this project that I'm talking about in this screencast. They're just doing the same thing that they did in Algebra by Example, except instead of it being all algebra skills, it's all skills that are for grades 4 and 5 math. And the reason that these grades were chosen was because the creators of the Algebra by Example workbook noticed that most of the misconceptions found in Algebra 1 had their roots in grades 4 to 5 math. And as a middle school math teacher myself, I can say that that is definitely true. I recently gave a test on operations with rational numbers, and it was amazing to see that the students had solved every single problem correctly, but they hadn't paid attention to where the decimal was placed or the positive and negative signs. So all the mistakes they were making were grades 4 and 5 math content related mistakes, not the content that I had been teaching. So that being said, I really see myself using this Math by Example workbook in my 7th grade math classes. The video on the STEM for All website ends with this quote that I really like. Our hope is that by addressing common misconceptions at the elementary level, it will better prepare students to succeed in higher level mathematics. I really think that that's possible because there's no way that these kids are going to be able to have success in those higher level math classes if they don't have the basic foundational understanding of grades 4 and 5 math or of Algebra 1 math skills. So for the next part, regarding the alignment between this project, Math by Example, and how students learn, the major connection I saw between these two was just about misconceptions. With how students learn, that addressed how students come into our classes with strong prior misconceptions regarding different basic or major topics. And even though we know that they can learn the correct thing, even if they have previously adopted a misconception, if this new learning that tries to dislodge the misconception is not taught well enough, then the students will revert back to their old misconception. This, I think, is one of the reasons why I'm seeing so many 7th grade students reverting back to those 4th and 5th grade math level misconceptions. As for the alignment or connection between this project, Math by Example, and my own STEM perspective, I thought that this question was a little bit harder to answer. And the reason I thought this was a little hard to answer was because this project, Math by Example, is mostly for math, but my STEM perspective, regards this, the coordination across all disciplines. So despite this project being targeted for math only, it really takes a fresh approach to teaching math. While there's not really coordination across disciplines in regards to the content that's being taught, there is coordination in regards to how it is taught. Addressing misconceptions in the way that this project does is more of an inquiry style or discovery approach to teaching. So rather than the teacher pointing out the mistakes and addressing students to correct them, the students determine on their own what mistakes were made and how or why they were made, and also how to correct or prevent them in the future. The major point I'm really trying to make here is that the math in this project is taught in the same way that science is typically taught, according to the new standards, by taking an inquiry-style approach to addressing these misconceptions. So I did reach out to just that generic info email address that was on one of my previous slides. I reached out early Thursday morning, so I haven't heard back yet, but it hasn't been too long. I just wanted to quickly know the release date of Math by Example, since the STEM for All video showed that it would be out June of 2018, but now we're in January of 2019 and it still says that it's coming soon online. Whenever I get a reply, I plan on following up with some more specific questions regarding this project. One of the things that I want to know is how the topics for Math by Example were chosen. If they maybe gave a large assessment with 4th and 5th graders and then analyzed that data, or maybe they just targeted the specific skills from the algebra by example that were more related to 4th and 5th grade math that the students were still deficient in or had misconceptions in. Another question I have that I plan on asking is that this resource is available for free, but I'm wondering if physical workbooks will be available for free, because this really seems like a great resource to give students to work on over the course of a year, little by little, or even as like a summer packet. And finally, we're on to why I chose this project and how this project will inform my teaching and learning. I am a 7th grade math teacher. I teach 7th grade on-level math and 7th grade algebra. So as a math teacher, this organization provides me amazing resources that I think would really benefit my students, and informs my teaching and learning, because I'm going to start using these algebra by example resources with my algebra students, and I actually used one of them with my on-level students today, and it was so amazing to hear their conversations about how the problems were solved correctly or incorrectly, or what specifically was done wrong. And they didn't even realize that those were some of the same mistakes they were making in previous weeks. But now this resource really allowed them to analyze those mistakes and see what was done wrong, and then hopefully correct it so that they don't make the same mistake in the future. Whenever the Math by Example resources are available, I plan on using those with both my Math 7 and Algebra students. Even though they're mostly 4th and 5th grade, there are still some of those misconceptions from earlier elementary years that my middle schoolers hold. I really just like the way that these problems are set up, because it teaches the students how to solve these mistakes so that they're not, how to identify and correct these mistakes so that they're not made in the future, and that improves their success in those skills and just in math in general. I usually try to include some problems with error analysis on some of my assignments and assessments, but I really like how the resources that this project created point out specifically where errors are made and have the students determine why they were made and how to correct them. And these are my resources.